Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Hope you are doing grand today. It's great to be back after a week away, and a joy to be back in part of our little pilgrimaging community here of working our way through the world. Hope you have had a good week. The beauty of these summer days that are taking on great significance. Hey Karen, good morning to you. And welcome. Thank you so much. It's good to be back. Hope you're doing great. Wondering if I think the new house is coming along. I think it's time we need to start planning a house blessing or a housewarming or something up there. It sounds like it's going pretty good. Hey, good morning, Donna. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're healing and enjoying the summer and all manner of good things. It is exciting, yes. So if you don't know, Karen's daughter Stephanie, who's a good friend of mine, is just her house construction, which has kind of been plagued by all manner of biblical catastrophes, is just getting wrapped up, and she's in the painting and appliance stage, and is getting ready to move in a little bit, and so we're super excited for her. Good morning, friends. All right. Okay, let's get going this morning. It is the 28th day of July, and getting better all the time. It's so great to hear that, Donna. That does my heart good. Thank you for telling me that. All right, let's start over. It's the 28th day of July, this Tuesday. Welcome at 11:11. It is good to be here and good to be with each of you. I pray that you are well and whole and good. That, it's a funny thing how we talk with God and it's easy for us to say, Lord help us, Lord do this, Lord thank you. But in many ways, it's more difficult when we're kind of trying to discern things, right? When we're trying to figure out what to do or how to be or what should we do with the things that we are called to do, that are on our heart, and how are we to contend with them. And so this idea of how we are to listen, or how we are when we're kind of trying to figure out what to do. There's a few things I want to talk about from the epistles today, from James and from Paul, because they were really trying to figure that out too. Here they are in the early church. James has got his little church in Jerusalem. Paul is going around the world sharing the good news, and yet, how do they know? How do they know what to do? Now, the book of Acts and so many things tells us so clearly that the Spirit was alive and well with them, and it almost seemed like it was just too easy. Like, go here, okay, I'll go there. Do say this, okay, I'll say that. And yet, so I think our lives in many ways feel so much more conflated and conflicted. But here they were, but there's some really beautiful and interesting advice, I think, that comes to them, and so much of it is just about having eyes to see and ears to hear, to being willing to open ourselves up. We have, as I often say, we have been poisoned by rationality. We have this way in which has been a part of our lives. We have this great advantage of having been living in a post-enlightenment age, and what that means is the first things need to do is make sense. And yet, the most important things, everything that's most important in our life, rarely makes sense. And so, James, in the first, this is right out of the gate, this is the 5th verse of James's letter to his church. Now, his church is being beat up, they're being oppressed, they're kind of falling apart a little bit. A lot of people are hiding out. And he sends this letter to be circulated around to try and draw them through this difficult time. And it's because so many of them are at this point where they're asking what to do. Do I stay in this fellowship with my brothers and sisters in Christ? Do I just kind of move on and not be in so much in the spotlight? And maybe the cops will leave me alone. And that they're trying to figure out their way through this. And right out of the gate, this is what James says, right? We're 5 verses into the first chapter, and he says this: if any of you, and this is from the Amplified Bible, so it's got some editorial comments around it, but I wanted to use this translation because it kind of tells us a little bit more. If any of you lacks wisdom to guide you through a decision or a circumstance, he is to ask of our benevolent God. So if any of you lacks wisdom to guide you through a difficult circumstance, we're to ask of God, our benevolent God, who gives to everyone generously, without rebuke or without blame, and it will be given to him. And so there's this way in which that we're invited into this constant asking. And really, it's so the constant asking is this kind of invitation into like a constant questioning, right? Or a constant relationship. This sense of, what do I do with this, or what is God going to do with this? And I think this is such a beautiful image of just kind of how to move through the world. That this is, James is saying, like, when things show up, kind of, and you don't really know, and it's not evident what we should make of this in this circumstance or in this decision cycle or in that the goodness of God wants to give us something in it. And so to say, and to not be afraid to ask, and to particularly not to have eyes to see and ears to hear, to not be willing to hear. Because sometimes, denial ain't just let me say that again. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. It is, in fact, a way in which we can not want to know a truth. We can not want to know a thing. We can even not want to sit in the discomfort of the knowing or the not knowing. And to say that God is with us even in the discomfort, even in the like, oh gosh, I might not like this answer, or might be, or we may not get an answer, and I don't like that. But God is even in us in the discomfort of sitting with the thing itself. This was shared yesterday by one of our folks here at church, and she posted about, this is her post from Facebook, so I'm not talking out of school, and it is so beautiful to me. She shared it with me before she posted it, and I felt it's one of those times as a pastor, you're like, this is an awesome job, because you get to journey with people and hear these stories with people and affirm them in them, and it was just so wonderful. So she wrote this, and I'll explain it. I'll read it, and then I'll kind of explain it to you. This is Christine's post. So, it's amazing sometimes when I think about the countless times God shows me his presence. Sometimes it's a quiet message, and sometimes it's loud and clear and in my face. Today, it was clear. Driving into work this morning, in the thick of an AM commute, I decided to jump off the expressway, one exit before my usual route. At the end of the exit ramp, there's a stoplight and a large billboard. Most of you all know I pray constantly for Liam. He is a Marine officer, and while he's currently safe and sound stateside, that can all change in an instant. The billboard of the picture that she posted was, which is an electronic billboard that is constantly changing. And this moment that she pulled up to this stoplight, it said, in big words, "We're with Liam." The billboard was sponsored, an ad for the USO. And Liam was some other soldier that they were profiling in that thing. We were not her Liam. but it was, on that day, her Liam. Now, she had a chance in that moment to say, oh gosh, what a coincidence. But to think for a moment, all of the things that had to line up. She had to be caught in traffic. She had to be considering a different way in which to go in terms of her route and to get to work. She had to be considering, like, all the people that on 93 expressway were cutting her off and were trying to get ahead. All of that, all of the chaos of the Boston Monday morning commute had to be compressed and choreographed and signed and brought into this moment. Her whole decision cycle about would she get off at this exit or that exit, all of that was brought into consideration, was manipulated into this moment, so that billboard, so some creative person out there in the USO was thinking for a moment, what is it that, like, we need a billboard campaign to get people to support the USO. How are we going to do that? Well, let's do a series of profiles on soldiers, and we'll put them up, people on commute, and they'll think like, oh, there's a soldier, there's a Marine, there's an airman that we can feel excited about supporting them, and then they'd go out and get those profiles, and they'd find this, and then they found this guy named Liam, not the Marine Liam that we know, but some guy named Liam that's out there serving, and we make that profile, and all those profiles, and all those different ads that are cycling through that electronic billboard every time, every 30 seconds or so on the commute of that. And that red light had to hit at just the moment so that she could pause before that billboard at just that right moment. All of that was coordinated, and 1,000 other things that I can't even articulate. Those are just the ones I can articulate. All of those things were coordinated so that she could sit in front of that place, and that her prayers for her son in uniform could be attended, and she could, and her asking of God's protection and care for him, and by virtue of that, her own desire to have peace in that, all of it that she asked for, and some that she didn't even ask for, all of it could be brought into consideration in that moment and displayed across the billboard to say, we're with Liam. And those 4 words, could be the very centerpiece of God speaking guidance and into her circumstance. What do we do? How do we do it? If any of you, hear James's words again, if any of you lacks wisdom to guide him through a decision or circumstance, he is to ask of our benevolent God, who gives to everyone generously and without rebuke or without blame, and it will be given to him. So that our desire to know, our desire to ask, our desire to pray, our desire to keep coming back again and again and again is there, that God's hand is in operation with an infinite number of things, and in it to speak to us. And we can take that moment, and say, oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that what a nice little thing that God just laid out for her? Isn't that sweet? Isn't that nice? And that actually it's none of those things. It should be terrifyingly awesome at all of the hundreds of thousands of millions of circumstances that were just coordinated for the fact that for her to receive that message. It's when we talk about the depth of the phrase from Proverbs. It's also in the Psalms where it says, the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But it is not to say that what we're supposed to do is quake in our boots. What it is to say is that we are supposed to have eyes that are opened to the awesomeness, to the wonder, to the magnificence, to the power, to the incredible scope in which God is working to both draw us, each one of us, into his grace and into our relationship with him and into our goodness and joy. And that, is it always going to look like a billboard? No. But not every conversation we have is through a megaphone. Sometimes our conversations, and sometimes the most meaningful ones, are whispers to us. Friends, my hope for you today is that you'll take in this message that I believe was not just for Christine, and not just for Liam, and not just to minister to her heart, to God to give her confidence and care that she is being provided for, that he is being provided for, and that all of it is within the palm of his hand. But also that in you, and hearing this story, and in knowing that this have an invitation to hear the words of James again, to hear the words and to be able to step into these places of your own wonderings, in your own decisions, in your own circumstances of the things that worry you or concern you or that you hope for. So that if any of you who lacks wisdom to guide him through a decision or circumstance, he is to ask our benevolent God, who gives to everyone generously and is without rebuke or without blame. Doesn't matter, wants you to ask, doesn't get tired of your asking, and it will be given to you. Friends, I hope you receive great bounties today in God's provision for you, and in God's ministry to you, and in God's love for you, in the showing of his presence in your life. Peace and grace to you all, my friends, and we will pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.